Welcome back. You're still tuned into Our City. Before the break, I gave you a roundup of today's news and what trended on social media. We recently sat down with Onkokame Mothobi, a senior researcher at Research ICT Africa, to find out why data costs so much. We live in the information age, where we are heavily dependent on data for day-to-day activities, whether it's searching for employment online or using it as a cheap way to communicate. Expensive data costs means that people are excluded from accessing important resources and opportunities. Let's watch the interview.
Okay, my name is Onkokame Mothobi. I work for Research ICT Africa. It's a company that collects information about pricing in 49 African countries. Currently in South Africa, we have 4 mobile operators which are providing data services. And as a Research ICT Africa, we collect data on 1 GB, 1 GB data. And then we have Telecom, which at a price of 99 for 1 GB data. And then we have Vodacom at a price of 149. And then we have Cell C also selling 1 GB data at a price of 149. However, we also have MTN. MTN sells its data, 1 GB data at 160 rands. So generally, over the past 8 quarters, we have seen that there have been a minimal competition among operators, with only Telecom Mobile reducing its data prices. However, one would have expected Cell C, which is the smallest operator, to have also reduced its prices, but that did not happen. One thing that we also have realized as Research ICT, we use these prices to compare data prices between South Africa and other 49 countries. And actually, South Africa does not compare well with regard to the 1 GB data in among African countries, being at position number 25. And we find that the first country which is selling data at about $1.2 US, and then we compare it with the cheapest data in South Africa, which is for Telecom Mobile at 99. We find that that is almost 7 times. Data in South Africa is almost 7 times expensive than in the cheapest country, which is Egypt. Probably one of the reasons that why we see data being expensive in South Africa, one of it is the operator strategies. We all know that in the past there have been, MTN and Vodacom have issues with the introduction of OTTs, and their main reason was that the OTTs will actually have an impact on their revenues, and therefore mobile operators still tends to use the traditional voice services, which is the SMS and the voice services, as their main revenue. So that is one of the things, the strategies and lack of competition in the market. Okay, as we have already stated in our policy brief, which is online, data prices in South Africa are high. Compared with other countries, for instance, best performing countries, South Africa is at position 6 among the best countries, with Kenya, Ghana, Kenya, and Tanzania. The main reason why data prices could be expensive in South Africa is mostly because of, we all know that over the past 6 years, there have been no allocation of spectrum. There have been an issue with spectrum between government and ICASA, and we know that that issue is still at the court. And that is the main reason, because we are not, there's not been any allocation of a high digital spectrum, which causes, which is a bit cheap to use, and therefore this is a big problem for operators in South Africa. And then the other issue is that ICASA has not yet done a study to find out if there's any dominance in the market, and also to find out what could be the cost of the the cost of rolling infrastructure and all that, what are the actual cost of supplying data, and therefore, because that has not been done and found out, ICASA does not necessarily have any idea on how to regulate the market, the prices. As I have already mentioned, I think ICASA took a very long time to actually do the study and find out what is happening, because markets have been changing and they continue to be changing. Probably next year we'll be talking about something else. I mean, market would have been changed, and then that study will become at a point where now we are dealing with something else. I mean, the telecommunication industry is one of the industries that is dynamic and changing over time. And I think, the time frame also might have an impact. But what we should focus on what is going to be the issue currently. I mean, prices, people cannot afford these prices as we speak. And we don't even know what that study is going to find out. So I think what we should mostly focus on is how do we lead to reduction in prices and all that. Okay, actually, internet is it's like a backbone of growth. It's a backbone of welfare. It's backbone of economic development, and it's also part of innovation. So through internet, people can access information, and the most reason why we find a lot of disparities between and inequalities between people and societies is because of lack of information. However, the data issue, reducing the cost of data actually give people an ability to access internet, which will give them access to information, and therefore people will be able to, because they have access to information, they will be able to, get opportunities which like, finding jobs over the internet, and also creating some innovative products. We all know that some people, for instance, a lot of artists, some of them were found through the internet and all that. So internet actually provide a lot of resources for people who are actually poor, especially in the sense that it bridges that gap in terms of information asymmetry. The most important thing is that if operators probably have to build a tower in one of the particular region, they have to be infrastructure. First, they have to be electricity. Second, there have to be access to that place, and that would mean things like road and all that. And infrastructure, electricity would be the most important issue with regard to data. And easy access to those places will actually also affect, costs of operators. Because if it's easier for them to access their towers where they build their towers, that would actually also reduce the infrastructure. But also infrastructure sharing is also part of those things that could actually lead to, reduction in prices and all that. Access to infrastructure by new operators, because if currently the biggest challenge with the telecommunication industry is that there are few players in the market, and then we already have giant players which already rolled their infrastructure, but now entry of new players become difficult, because if they are not allowed to access the infrastructure that is also already available, then it means they will have to roll out their infrastructure. And given that all the operators are currently, like almost everybody who's having who access or who has the potential to access to the internet is already in a particular network, and they are kind of logged in, it becomes very expensive for new operators to kind of roll their infrastructure. The market is such that if you have, in some markets, but fortunately for South Africa, we have mobile number portability, which allows people to move with their numbers from one operator to the other, and therefore that somehow enhances competition in the industry. But in cases where we have people who are kind of, people who are not aware of what's happening in the market, and because of issues of loyalty, and people who, in most cases, are afraid to learn about new products. For instance, if you have to move from MTN to Vodacom, there are a lot of things that you have to learn about Vodacom. So people normally don't switch. And in that particular instance, we kind of have market which is kind of segmented across across people. For instance, if Vodacom right now, I think it owns around 44% of the market, that means Vodacom is monopolizing almost everybody who is in that segment. And then we also have MTN monopolizing its people because they cannot move anywhere. They're already in that network. And that is why today we see a problem with Cell C, which is owns around less than 5% of the market, because people cannot, it's difficult for people to move from these operators to small operators. We still don't know how, but Research ICT Africa is conducting a study, a survey data, which will inform on to why are people not moving from expensive operators to cheap operators. Given what have people been saying, and the knowledge that telecom has, it's one of the most connected in terms of infrastructure and all that amongst all, one would have, that wouldn't be an issue, and would be expecting people to move from, operators such as MTN, which offers 1 GB at 160, and Vodacom at 149, to a cheapest operator which offers 1 GB at around 99 rands. Yeah. So, but however, the market is so complicated. There's a lot of information asymmetry. People don't really understand what is going on in the market, and those are the things that really affect. Consumers are not aware of products. Operators also are, bringing in products that are very difficult for consumers to understand. For instance, we have some bundled packages, which include both voice, SMS, and then data. However, they have remained a bit expensive for the poor people in South Africa, and unaffordable to them, and only affordable to those people who are with higher incomes. However, those products kind of, they offer a value for money, but they are very expensive, or they're unaffordable to just poor South Africans. Like mostly, I think this issues goes back to issues of regulation. There's been an issue with the regulation of the telecommunications sector in Africa. There's so much involvement of the government. ICASA is just there as an independent. It's claiming to be independent, but and actually it's not independent. If we look at the issues of spectrum, if we look at everything else, you find that actually the market is kind of running itself, and it's more likely to be issues of regulation. I mean, it's one of the biggest markets in where you would expect issues such as the dominance, research on or assessing whether there's dominance in the market. These are the things that should be done long time ago, and however, it's a bit, that's the biggest challenge that we're having. I think regulation issues are the challenging issues.